He was Batman, he was Iceman, he was Jim Morrison. Val Kilmer wasn't just a movie star, he was a force, a presence, a fire that lit up every frame of the 92nd. But today, if you hear him speak, it's barely more than a whisper. His voice, once commanding, magnetic, unforgettable, has been stripped away. And what's even stranger, Hollywood didn't seem to notice. Or worse, it didn't care. For years, the headlines painted him as difficult, uncooperative, even delusional. And then, directors stopped calling, studios stopped casting. But no one ever asked, why? Behind the scenes, Val was fighting something far more terrifying than bad press. He was in pain. Real, physical pain, burning his throat, stealing his breath, silencing his soul. But he kept it hidden. Because in Hollywood, silence is survival. This isn't the story of a fading actor. This is the story of how a man lost everything, his health, his reputation, and his voice, and how an entire industry turned its back on him while pretending to applaud. You may think you know Val Kilmer, but the truth behind his silence is much darker. Val Edward Kilmer was born on the 31st of December, 1959, in Los Angeles, California. He wasn't born into poverty, but into a house haunted by silence. His parents divorced when he was just 8, and emotional distance became the language of the household. But the real heartbreak came a year later, when his younger brother, Wesley, died in a drowning accident. Val was only 9. Wesley was the creative one, the filmmaker, the dreamer, the light of the family. When he was gone, something broke in Val too. He withdrew into himself, into characters, into voices, into imaginary worlds. It wasn't just play, it was escape. He'd mimic accents, reenact scenes from Shakespeare, perform monologues in the mirror. While other boys played baseball, Val studied drama. By the time he was in high school, teachers called him unsettlingly intense and possessed by something bigger than himself. But he wasn't acting for fame. He was acting because it was the only time he felt understood. He got accepted into Juilliard's drama division, the youngest person at the time to do so. At just 17, Val stepped into the most prestigious acting institution in America. But even there, he never quite fit. His classmates said he was brilliant, but also isolated. There was a tension in him, a restlessness, a wound that never quite healed from losing his brother, now hidden behind 1,000 characters and a booming, crafted voice. What no one knew then, that voice, so powerful and confident, wasn't just a gift. It was his armor. Val Kilmer didn't just arrive in Hollywood, he detonated. After graduating from Juilliard, he began on the stage, where his Shakespearean training gave him a presence that directors couldn't ignore. But it was his breakout role in the absurd spy spoof Top Secret, 1984, that put him on the map. Handsome, quick-witted, and charming. Val had it all. And unlike many stars, he could actually sing. He did all his own vocals in the film. Then came Top Gun, 1986. As Iceman, he wasn't even the lead, but he stole every scene from Tom Cruise. Stoic, cool, dangerously competitive Val embodied the kind of masculine mystery that defined the decade. Suddenly, he was a sex symbol. Magazine covers, studio deals, A-list attention. But Val wasn't satisfied with being the poster boy. He wanted depth. He wanted danger. So, in 1991, he shocked critics by disappearing into the role of Jim Morrison in The Doors. He didn't just act the part, he became Morrison. He read every journal, mimicked every slur, even moved into Morrison's old house. The performance was hypnotic, reckless, brilliant, and it terrified people. Now, Val Kilmer was more than just a star. He was an actor committed, fearless, and impossible to predict. And that terrified studios even more. He was cast as Batman in Batman Forever, 1995. A role many actors would kill for, but the costume was suffocating. and the production process clashed with his method approach. He delivered a box office hit, but behind the scenes, producers whispered that he was difficult. That word would follow him like a shadow. He wasn't partying, he wasn't spiraling. He was intense, demanding, obsessed with authenticity, and in an industry built on compromise and control, that made him dangerous. But to the public, Val Kilmer was unstoppable. Every year brought another hit. Heat, 1995. The Ghost and the Darkness, 1996. The Saint, 1997. He was magnetic, bankable, undefinable. But what no one saw, what no one wanted to see, was that his need for perfection wasn't ego. It was protection. Val wasn't trying to sabotage his career. He was trying to hold on to something real in a world that kept demanding masks. And slowly, without anyone noticing, that world began to shut him out. By the early 2000s, Val Kilmer's name had become a whisper in casting rooms. The same intensity that once made him brilliant was now being spun into a liability. He was difficult, unpredictable, too intense. But no one ever asked what was happening behind the scenes. He wasn't spiraling from scandal. He wasn't battling addiction. What he was battling silently was pain. In 2014, Val began experiencing serious throat discomfort. He ignored it. Actors are taught to push through, to suffer for their craft. But the pain didn't go away, and neither did the swelling. He finally went to the doctor only to hear the one word no actor ever wants to hear: cancer. Specifically, throat cancer. The very place his gift lived. He didn't tell the world. He didn't hold a press conference. He vanished. For 2 years, Val underwent chemotherapy, radiation, and an emergency tracheotomy. The treatments saved his life, but they stole something else. His voice, the deep, commanding tone that once made directors lean forward in their chairs, was now reduced to a raspy whisper. He couldn't speak without a voice box. He couldn't breathe without discomfort, and in an industry built on image and sound, he was no longer marketable. But instead of sympathy, Hollywood doubled down on its judgment. They remembered the whispers, the tension, the diva moments, and assumed the silence meant he'd finally burned out. But Val wasn't done. He kept trying. In interviews, he'd show up with a scarf over his tracheotomy tube. He'd smile, nod, gesture more than speak. And when he did speak, it was haunting, like a man speaking through the rubble of his own ruins. The public didn't know what to make of it. They hadn't seen the fight. They only saw the aftermath. And in the age of viral fame, Val Kilmer, who once dominated every marquee, was fading into irrelevance. Not because he failed, but because he could no longer perform the way the world demanded. His identity as an actor had always been wrapped in voice, control, and intensity. Now, all three had been taken from him. Worse still, many believed he had simply disappeared by choice, that he had walked away. They didn't know the truth. He had been silenced by illness, by pain, and by an industry too impatient to wait. In 2021, the documentary Val gave the world a glimpse of his reality. Home videos, diary entries, behind-the-scenes footage from decades past, but even that film deeply moving, as it was only scratched the surface. The real story wasn't just about a lost voice. It was about a man screaming from the inside, and no one listened. There's a moment in the documentary Val where Kilmer stares into the camera, eyes watery, tracheotomy visible, and struggles to push out the words, "I feel like I'm just getting started." The irony is devastating. By the time he felt ready to tell his story, the world had stopped listening. Hollywood had moved on. The scripts stopped arriving. Friends stopped calling. Even fans, unsure how to process his new voice, slowly faded away. He was a man once worshipped for the power of his performance, now battling to say a single sentence. He couldn't read aloud to his children, couldn't answer interviews without exhausting effort, couldn't even order food without being misunderstood. And yet, he never declared defeat. In the silence, He began filming himself hundreds of hours of old tapes, monologues, moments from sets, all stitched together into a fragile mosaic of who he once was and who he refused to stop being. But the truth is, there is no triumphant comeback here, no third-act redemption in the traditional Hollywood sense. Val didn't get his voice back, he didn't land another blockbuster, he didn't walk across another red carpet to thunderous applause. What he got instead was a slow, aching confrontation with the one thing he had spent his whole life trying to control: vulnerability. The actor who once played gods, warriors, and outlaws had become something far more human to man, learning to exist without the very tool that made him who he was. And in that unbearable silence, the tragedy became clear. Val Kilmer didn't lose his voice overnight. He lost it piece by piece through misjudgment, misunderstanding, and a world too impatient to hear him whisper. Today, Val Kilmer's voice may be gone, but his story echoes louder than ever. He is no longer the man in the cape, the rock god, or the cold-eyed villain. He's something far more enduring, a mirror held up to Hollywood's cruelty, and a testament to the strength it takes to keep going when the world turns silent. In recent years, former co-stars and directors have spoken up, regretful, admiring. Tom Cruise brought him back for Top Gun. Maverick in 2022, a brief yet powerful scene that left audiences in tears. Not because of nostalgia, but because, for the first time, the world saw Val as he truly is: wounded, human, and still standing. His children say he never stopped being an artist, that even in silence, he found ways to express through painting, writing, smiling. His documentary isn't a comeback, it's a confession, a love letter, a goodbye that never quite says goodbye. In the end, maybe Val Kilmer was never meant to be just a star. He was a man searching for truth in a business built on illusion. And maybe, just maybe, he didn't lose his voice. Maybe he simply outgrew the need to scream for attention in a world that only listens when it's too late.